Let's see, some of it's gone to water. I got a real problem here.
It can be an environmental disaster, an operational disaster, and a business disaster, a pollution emergency. But if and when prevention fails, plenty of preparation and plenty of practice can make a world of difference. The very best crews are the ones prepared for the worst. And that's what this program is all about, pollution response. Make no mistake about it, preparing for the worst is more than good seamanship and good sense. It's also the law.
Check all the stoppers.
New regulations require shipping companies to guarantee a higher level of crew training and readiness than ever before. And part of that readiness is the ability to respond to a pollution emergency.
80% plus of all accidents are human error. We realize that if we can have a base level of training for all mariners internationally, that we can prevent, hopefully, a lot of those.
It does give me a lot of confidence to know that the crew can respond the way you would expect in case of an emergency situation.
In this program, we'll outline correct procedures for an effective oil spill response. We'll show you how to prepare and conduct effective drills or exercises, and we'll simulate a drill. And we'll get expert commentary from the people who enforce the rules.
Again, in an oil spill, once it's happened, what you want to do is mitigate the results of that or the circumstances. Anything that you can do beforehand, especially in training and coordination and pre-planning, is value added in the outcome.
So that is stopping, so that is the intersection and all of these. Pollution could be air pollution, noise pollution, sound pollution, a lot of those things. But we're basically emphasizing the pollution which is related to MARPOL, and that is the pollution which is all due to oil, various types of oil, and pollution which is could be related to the garbage aspect of it.
Because of the catastrophic results of oil pollution, we're going to concentrate in this program on oil pollution response. The heart of this program is preparation, how to practice and drill effectively. So in case of a real emergency, you can respond effectively. But you shouldn't even start practicing until you know you can do it safely and skillfully. That takes training and planning in 4 basic steps. The first step in planning the drill is training. Educate your people on how to practice safely and knowledgeably.
This has 8 checkoffs here: stop the product flow, warn personnel, shut off ignition sources, contain, control spill, which what we're going to be concerned with today.
Led by their chief mate, this crew is planning and preparing for a pollution response drill. Part of their preparation is review of a key section in their emergency response manual, the SOPEP. SOPEP stands for Shipboard Oil Pollution Emergency Plan.
What we as a company expect is that our crew members know how to follow the procedures in their shipboard oil pollution emergency plans. And those procedures really are fairly simple.
The second step in planning the drill is procedures. Educate your crew on what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, using the SOPEP as your guide. This SOPEP has 8 steps, beginning with stopping oil flow, sounding warnings and alarms, and proceeding through notification of the proper authorities and containing the spill. Identify the members of the spill response teams. These responsibilities divide into 2, the communications team and the containment team. Some of your team will have hands-on responsibilities on deck. Others will be supervising communications among the crew members and with designated agencies shoreside. Step 4 in planning is familiarizing the team with their equipment, where it's located, and how it's operated.
We have a checklist of what's in here. Basically,
If there are crew members who don't know where the pollution response equipment is located, show them. Good preparation serves two purposes. First, you prepare the crew for your drill or exercise. Second, a Port State Control Inspector may ask to see the pollution response equipment, or even for the crew to stage a drill. Here are some tips for effective drill planning. Plan well ahead of time, the time, type, and location of the drill, and inform your crew. Create a realistic scenario, and always involve as many people as possible for the best possible learning experience. Your planning and your preparation are now behind you. The time for the drill itself approaches. Every SOPEP is a little bit different. Every ship, captain, and crew is unique. Your scenario is going to be your own. But we chose this particular ship for our drill because we like their realistic approach and we like their enthusiasm.
Hello, attention all crew. This is a pollution drill. We want everybody right now. Over.
The drill we're about to see has 9 steps. Since no actual oil is spilled, there's some role-playing involved. But it's an effective hands-on learning experience. Here's the scenario. During bunkering, a tank has overflowed, spilling bunker fuel on deck, over the side, and in the water. For purposes of the drill, we assume that the spill has not been noticed until oil has entered the water. Step number 1 is emergency shutdown, stopping pumps, closing valves, shutting down ignition sources such as welding or smoking. Does the crew have the hand signals right? What's the next procedure? The chief is both a player and a coach. Step number 2 is sounding the alarm, reporting what you've seen. Detecting the spill sets off a whole string of communications.
Communication is the key to everything. We are not looking at communication just between myself and the chief engineer. The communication has to filter down right down to the lowest rating on board.
The officer in charge informs the captain and the other members of the pollution response team. The captain sounds the general alarm to call out the response team. Step 3 is to assess conditions. Refer to your SOPEP and use the oil spill report form. The SOPEP lists your procedures, which may be quickly scanned. Use the SOPEP to assess how much you know and how you should proceed. There are 2 things going on. Usually, the captain heads up communications from the bridge, while on deck, the chief directs containment efforts. Both need to coordinate with the other. As you script and conduct your drills, be aware that there are 2 types of spills. Spills that are contained on the decks of the ship and spills that reach the water. The scenario you choose will influence what happens in the next step. Some very quick actions in the communications center.
We have oil on the deck here, and we suspect about 500 liters of oil has gone overboard.
Step number 4, report. First to the ship owner and/or manager, then to the appropriate shoreside authorities listed in the SOPEP, and your P&I Club correspondent.
I believe you'll be coming on board. We have got this containment and cleanup organized.
The SOPEP should list the phone numbers and who to contact, as well as the criteria for who should be called when.
Our first goal is for people to know where their containment equipment is on board the vessel and how to use it. But if oil does enter the water, the crew needs to know that it's gone beyond their own limited capacity to contain the spill, and they need help from the shoreside establishment.
Even as people are scrambling to begin containment and cleanup, there's some assessment taking place on deck, too. Step number 5 says safety first. Check for flammable liquid spills. Address any injuries, fires, or other damage related to the incident. And be careful. Oil on deck is slippery. Part of your SOPEP designates who's in charge at the point of the spill. In our example here, it's the shared responsibility of the chief engineer and the chief mate. They evaluate crew safety issues, assign responsibilities, and direct the cleanup. That's step 6, communication. Keep a steady link between the communications team and the containment team. At this point, the two should be operating in parallel. The captain is in touch with the authorities and ready to call for additional resources. The chiefs are supervising the action at the point of the spill. They're maintaining a steady dialogue with each other. Remember to keep communications short and direct. Step 7, damage control. Determine the source of the spill or leak and make sure it's stopped. Even as you're cleaning up what's already spilled, you need to make sure you're not spilling any more. Taking the head off an overflowing fuel tank, for instance, to prevent further damage. Again, like a lot of this process, these steps are going on in parallel, addressing the effects and the cause at the same time. Don't forget that the primary purpose of the drill is learning, practice. The chiefs take time as the drill proceeds to coach crew members and improve their performance. They want individual competence and smooth teamwork.
The pre-training procedures that we have now is, I would say, they are not any more individual skills. We are looking at developing all responses based on a teamwork base. So we are looking at a combined response to whatever situation that we have to face.
Step number 8 in the drill is to use the on-deck recovery equipment. This includes portable transfer pumps and hoses, spill kits and absorbent materials, shovels, brooms, and kitty litter or sawdust. The name of the game is absorbency, sopping stuff up and getting rid of it. An air diaphragm pump may be used to vacuum up large puddles of oil, with input and output hoses for transfer into drums. Absorbent materials are twisted into loops and placed around all deck outlets and scuppers. Containment is just what it says, keeping the oil in a contained place, then cleaning it up. The final step in today's drill is disposal, collecting the oil debris into drums for proper disposal on arrival in port. Besides the material you're disposing of, the end of the drill is also time to restow unused materials properly. Make sure there are adequate supplies for the next drill or the real thing. Here are some tips for doing effective drills. Know your SOPEP, the official guide you'll use throughout the drill. Make sure you practice the communication part of the process, not just the containment. It's just as important. And use the drill as a learning experience. Coach and teach your people. It's important that you keep a record of all drills and training exercises. New STCW regulations require documentation of training and crew competence.
This sets a base standard that says that you have to be trained at this level, and by the way, you have to show us that you did it, so that we can verify it, and then we hold the mariner and the company. We'll hold the mariner and the company accountable.
Yes. Minimum work in pairs.
Make sure you evaluate and share what you've learned. Make sure you communicate and follow up on any areas where you're weak. And make sure you document your work and the training of every crew member. We're entering a new era in the business of maritime safety, with greater attention to the human factor, not just the machinery, and tighter regulations that require documented proof that we're training our people right. That makes exercises like pollution response drills all the more important. Here are a couple of final thoughts on how to do it right. prevention is still the best way to deal with pollution. Include training on the causes of spills, too. Focus on people as well as procedures. Your SOPEP and muster list should include an organized command structure for pollution response. Train frequently, even for shorter time periods. Set up a training schedule and stick to it.
The Coast Guard would like to see you drilling once a month. So for our company, what the Coast Guard says is good advice, and that's what we follow.
They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In the case of pollution response, that means preparation and practice in case prevention fails. Train regularly and realistically. Document what you do, and even in the worst case, you'll be ready to do your best. The transfer of fuel oil into a vessel, bunkering, requires diligence, safety consciousness, and proper procedures. Safe bunkering is the product of good communication, proper crew training, and compliance with international, federal, and local laws. The safe bunkering procedures you'll see presented here come from those three sources: internationally accepted maritime practices, the United States Coast Guard regulations, and the brand new guidelines of a local regulator, the Washington State Office of Marine Safety. You'll see and hear a collection of transfer tips, timely reminders throughout the program on handling oil safely. You'll see and hear safe procedures listed, explained, and illustrated. And you'll see and hear the state-of-the-art in marine safety, Washington State's new bunkering guidelines.
Now the deck roving watch is...
Maritime safety is a people process. Virtually every marine accident or oil spill is the result of human error. It's well-trained people working conscientiously together that make safe seamanship a reality.
Since the enactment of the Oil Pollution Act of '90, there's been a tremendous consciousness, on the part of all, both the regulators and the customers, being our mariners, to the fact that no longer will we tolerate having oil going into our environment.
We're just going to have to watch these containment locations and make sure they don't fill up with rainwater.
Right.
A good bunkering operation begins with proper preparation, sharing key information, explaining correct procedures, establishing communication links, reviewing pre-loading plans, providing crew education and training.
Everybody who's involved in the training session should be told everything about the bunker operation, not only their own job, but they should be sitting there listening when the other person's job is being talked about, so they have a full understanding of the fact that communication in almost all operations is critical.
We call it the human factor. No matter how much we inspect and improve our ships and our equipment, it's people, procedures, and practice that make for safe shipping. You may already be aware that over 80% of the incidents and accidents that occur aboard ship are due to human error. What you may not be aware of is a whole new set of regulations and procedures that focus in on this human factor. Among the most important of these is shipboard familiarization. Every ship is different. Good seafarers have always familiarized themselves with the specifics, equipment, procedures, duties. But now, shipboard familiarization is more than just good practice. It's the law.
You're seeing less and less regulations being written to modify and change machinery. They've recognized that we've modified machinery enough to the point to where it's rarely a problem in an incident. They're finding more that it's becoming the problem of the human factor, the person, or management policies, and that sort of thing.
The STCW code says companies must ensure that all seafarers who are newly joining a ship are given reasonable opportunity to become familiar with the shipboard equipment, procedures, and arrangements needed for proper performance of their duties before being assigned to those duties.
Familiarization is important in whichever vessel any crew member joins. All vessels are different, all have different procedures, all have different equipment. Even if two sister vessels, you will find it hard to believe, we have got 5 sister vessels of the same type, and all 5 of them may have differences in various equipment.
In this program, we're going to introduce you to the basics of shipboard familiarization, right out of the book, the STCW code, and demonstrated right here aboard ship. STCW requires that ships have written instructions for ship familiarization. Port State Control inspectors can and will ask to see these instructions. So, let's get started.
Hello, all crew. We have a fire in the forecastle. All crew fire at the muster at the station, please.
There is no greater safety concern at sea than fire. To protect our lives, our ships, and our cargoes from fire, we must do 3 things and do them well: prevention, preparation, and practice. In this program, we'll look at ways to improve fire safety at sea, especially ways to prepare and conduct fire drills. We'll also give you some practical advice from industry experts. You conduct fire drills at sea for your own safety, of course, but they're also required for certification, for insurance purposes, and by Port State Control.
Our emphasis on safety is on prevention, and certainly when you look at the catastrophic or potentially catastrophic outcome of a fire on a vessel, you've got to work at prevention, and then you have to work at training and education of how to respond to a fire.
Fire creates 3 hazards, any one of which can kill you. Flames and heat cause burns and damage property. Smoke and vapors suffocate people, and explosions kill and maim. Let's start with some of the fire basics. Fires need 3 things: ignition to start, oxygen to breathe, and fuel to consume and burn. Eliminate oxygen and fuel and you snuff fires out. Eliminate ignition and you keep fires from starting in the first place. That's prevention. Most fires aren't accidents. They're caused by carelessness or poor procedures. Welding and burning are obvious fire hazards, but prevention should also include attention to galley operations, oil transfer procedures, cargo storage, wiring and circuits, and especially careless smoking.
Team 1, Fire Team 1 from the ship inside of their area. We still have reports of 2 people missing.
A shipboard fire is among the most severe emergencies mariners can face. And if that fire erupts in port, officers and crews face added challenges. You have more resources to help fight the fire, but you also have new roles and new responsibilities.
We have crews coming up to assist. That's our only access.
Yeah, that's only access.
Fighting fires in port tests more than your knowledge of fire safety. This program is about the communications process, too. Both the ship and the shore want to put fires out quickly and safely, but sometimes they have different ideas about how to do it.
I think the captain, at this point in time, has to be aware that the firefighting resources from the local departments will be very, very anxious to help, but won't have much of an idea of how they can help.
You have a much better firefighting evolution if you can get the people on the ship to share their information with the people on the shore, and that's really a critical link.
Fire in port, the ship-shore interface, is in 4 parts: communicating effectively, the fire plan and its importance, the incident command system, and coordinating the ship-shore response to the fire.
There's not a whole lot of firemen that want to be a marine firefighter because they're not the friendliest fires that we can face.
Do you have a mate who can help him?
We'll follow the action in an actual ship-shore fire exercise and hear expert commentary from some of the key players, including the United States Coast Guard, which monitors fire safety practices in American ports.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said that certainly in a crisis, the best decision is the right decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision, and the worst decision is no decision.
Our focus here is on the ship side of the ship-shore interface. What's different about fighting a fire when you're in port? What's the same? And what should you do?
Life aboard ship can be strenuous, dangerous, and even hazardous. No matter how attentive we are to safety and prevention, injury and illness at sea are inevitable. People get sick and people get hurt at sea just as on land. This program explains and illustrates the basics of maritime medicine, from everyday to emergency.
You need to be able to hang this somehow above the patient's heart level so that the fluid will flow in and so that it will not just be backing up.
If you can't start an IV, there's a very good chance that person will die before you can get help to them. So having IV capability is very important.
You will see and hear hands-on demonstrations and commentary by doctors and other health professionals who specialize in maritime medicine. You can use this tape for instruction, for training, and for later reference.
And the bone that he's fractured, as we saw on X-ray, is between this knuckle and the wrist bones.
I think seeing something is always very valuable. And in medical school, they told us basically, see one, do one, teach one. So here's the opportunity to get partway down the pike and to see one. And hopefully it's something that can be quickly reviewed before you start an IV or suture if it's not been done recently or something that the medical officer is not comfortable doing. They can refresh their memory very quickly.
Part 1 of the program is preparation, the equipment and information you need. These segments are coded green for later reference. Part 2 of the program is assessment, from routine exams to checking key vital signs. These segments are coded yellow. Part 3 of the program is treatment, techniques, from suturing wounds to setting up IV lines. These segments are coded blue.
To work effectively, ships and their crews must work safely. Developing a safety culture will prevent personal injuries on board ships. It's not only the safe and smart way to operate, it's also mandatory. Running a safe ship is important to those who own it, to those who man it, and to those who entrust it with their cargo. It's also an important new emphasis of the revised STCW Convention and the ISM Code. Specifically, the ISM Code requires ship owners and managers to develop a safety management system that will provide for safe practices in ship operation, establish safeguards against risk, and continuously improve safety management skills. In this program, we'll feature the insight and commentary of author Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, sets out the basic steps in building a true safety culture on board ship.
The worst way to do it is just to put a set of manuals on board the ship and say, follow these procedures and everything will be fine, because take it from me, it won't be. What it really is about is giving the people on the ship the ownership of the procedures. Let them have a part of it. When you're developing the procedures, go around the ship with them, take the people on board, and take them to show you what safe practice is. It's an evolving process.
Turn it on by flipping this switch here.
We'll identify the 6 items of personal protective equipment recommended for individual protection. We'll discuss the ways ships can prevent accidents and injuries before they happen. And we'll see examples of the safe use of onboard tools and equipment. How serious is the business of personal injury prevention? P&I clubs estimate that after cargo claims, personal injury and illness claims are their second largest category of claims registered, accounting for more than 1/3 of the total. To dramatize the seriousness of this issue, we're going to introduce you to a couple of characters that are not quite so serious, to contrast the good and the bad.
Now, safety schmakety.
Come on. Safety at sea requires that we develop a safety culture, an environment where safety becomes an everyday priority and a process of continuous improvement. In this program, we're going to look at some of the everyday work practices that can be improved with a greater attention to personal safety and injury prevention. We'll highlight the use of the 6 essential pieces of personal protective equipment: boiler suits, steel-toed safety shoes, safety helmets, ear protection, gloves, and goggles. We'll also feature commentary by loss prevention expert Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, is the best authority on the subject.
We can quantify costs, we can quantify the repatriation costs and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, people don't want to get hurt. And they don't want to let the side down.
There's a right way and a wrong way to approach safety. We'll show you both, using a little humor to make the contrast more obvious. Ships that succeed at building a safety culture do 4 things well. They identify their safety problems and concerns. They provide proper equipment and training. They make safety an everyday priority. And they develop reporting systems so they can improve and take corrective action. Let's take a look at how it works. It can be an environmental disaster, an operational disaster, and a business disaster, a pollution emergency. But if and when prevention fails, plenty of preparation and plenty of practice can make a world of difference. The very best crews are the ones prepared for the worst. And that's what this program is all about, pollution response. Make no mistake about it, preparing for the worst is more than good seamanship and good sense. It's also the law.
Check all the stoppers.
New regulations require shipping companies to guarantee a higher level of crew training and readiness than ever before. And part of that readiness is the ability to respond to a pollution emergency.
80% plus of all accidents are human error. We realize that if we can have a base level of training for all mariners internationally, that we can prevent, hopefully, a lot of those.
It does give me a lot of confidence to know that the crew can respond the way you would expect in case of an emergency situation.
In this program, we'll outline correct procedures for an effective oil spill response. We'll show you how to prepare and conduct effective drills or exercises, and we'll simulate a drill. And we'll get expert commentary from the people who enforce the rules.
Again, in an oil spill, once it's happened, what you want to do is mitigate the results of that or the circumstances. Anything that you can do beforehand, especially in training and coordination and pre-planning, is value added in the outcome.
Pollution could be air pollution, noise pollution, sound pollution, a lot of those things. But we're basically emphasizing the pollution which is related to MARPOL, and that is the pollution which is all due to oil, various types of oil, and pollution which is could be related to the garbage aspect of it.
Because of the catastrophic results of oil pollution, we're going to concentrate in this program on oil pollution response. This video presentation is an introduction to the United States Port State Control Program. In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn how the program works and what to expect during a Port State Control inspection. You'll follow a Coast Guard inspection team and find out what they're looking for. And you'll get expert advice from people who share your concern for the safety of our ships, crews, and ports.
The Port State Control Program is intended to elevate all shipping to the level that we believe the U.S. shipping fleet is at, and for the protection of those crews on those vessels, for the protection of U.S. ports, and for the protection of the United States environment.
Fully 90% of the maritime trade in United States ports now involves foreign flag vessels. Most of these ships operate safely, but changes in traditional ownership and registry of vessels have increased the number of ships posing a risk to U.S. ports.
You can get your certificate from a nation that doesn't have a single river, lake, or coastal lines. They'll issue whatever paperwork you need to get that business, but if they come to port states such as U.S., then we're going to be aggressive to ensure that they meet the standard that International Maritime Organization has agreed to.
The U.S. Port State Control Program identifies potentially high-risk foreign ships based on performance of owners, operators, classification societies, and flag states. These targeted vessels are then subject to boarding and inspection.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that the Port State Control is interested in is the safety aspects of the vessel.
The Coast Guard didn't make the rules. The maritime community did, for the safety of their people, their equipment, and their customers. It's safety and seamanship, based on international conventions and agreements, including SOLAS, Safety of Life at Sea, MARPOL, the Marine Pollution Convention, STCW, the Standards for Training, Certification, Watchkeeping for Seafarers, ILLC, International Load Line Convention, and ILO 147, the International Labor Organization Standards. Just like any business, the maritime industry faces both opportunities and challenges. Do more with less. Reduce costs without compromising quality. Operate more efficiently, but also more safely. And continue to improve our people. This little book is making a very big impact. It's called STCW 95, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers. The STCW and its 1995 amendments are more than just rules. They're a closer focus on people, how we teach them, evaluate them, and keep track of their progress. STCW can be confusing. Different people have different interpretations. Our purpose here is to find some consensus and give you a common sense approach to complying with STCW on board your ship.
I think the key thing to remember is it sets a base standard, and that we want all of the professional mariners to comply with.
What STCW code is asking for is a slight raising of the standards. They're going to find that the company has a little bit more responsibility to assure that certain things are happening on board a ship, assure that their crews aren't being overworked, assure that they're getting familiarization training, and that when they're on board that they are competent at the abilities that they are supposed to be competent at. It's asking for an extra level of oversight to make sure that things are operating okay.
None of the new regulations require that a vessel float in a sea of paper. They require that responsibility and authority be tracked, and how you do that is up to your own company procedures.
We've divided this program into 8 major areas of compliance, with comments from company officials and the United States Coast Guard. Their port state control officers may examine you in any of these areas to make sure you're in compliance with STCW. So, let's get started.